Again, a lot of the things that we see architecturally, looking at some of these megalithic sites, it really raises a lot of questions as to how they could get these stones to fit so well together and how they built the structure so perfectly aligned to repeating astronomical alignments. And that's really the question. Was it aliens that helped us in the past, or was it us? And truthfully, I'm leaning more towards the us. It turns out that there is some lost cycle of time, well off the recorded books of our history that we understand now, that shows human evolution appears to be going through a cycle. We've heard of the Dark Ages or the Golden Age. So I think it's very possible that we are going to further discover things about our past very soon here in the future. Really anything's possible. I mean, we find a spark plug buried in rock layers that show it's 30 million years old. It's a spark plug.
Yeah.
Or, you know, all these types of anomalies, artifacts that, again, like you mentioned with Cremo's book, Forbidden Archaeology, he points out things that just kind of stand out. The problem is finding a complete civilization where they can put into context how they were using that technology. So there's a big gap between what we currently end at the Sumerian culture at 3800 BC into this, right? Things that are millions of years old and are clearly technological. Maybe it's even a hollow earth. I mean, there's been lots of theories that state certain areas in Antarctica or Alaska, people either flew directly in or somehow, you know, made an expedition to the interior of the earth. Who really knows? But with our technology, I hope a lot of these things can be answered. Discovering an ocean, that's amazing. We just started a new organization called Ancient Explorers. And the idea is to take experts and go to some of these world-renowned locations, Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuaman, various places where there's this architecture of building style, but also in placement. Places where they spent great detail monitoring the heavens. So that's really the quest that I'm planning over the next few years, is several expeditions where we're going to take groups of people with us, but also deploy technology, ground-penetrating radar, high-resolution aerial drone photography, and start to map out and look for things that might be on the tertiary of some of these sites and haven't been discovered. All over Nazca, everyone knows of the lines on the plateaus, but on the surrounding mountain range, there are geometric figurines and mathematical diagrams. Really, the only people that investigated this were, I think, Erich von Däniken in one of his Chariots of the Gods videos. But it's not a well-known thing to see all these mathematical geometric figures in Nazca in the mountain ranges, and you can only see them from the sky. One of the things that we've been looking into is the whole idea that, you know, the great sarcophagus in the king's chamber doesn't have a lid, it's just a box. And surprisingly, the dimensions of that great sarcophagus are identical to the lost Ark of the Covenant.
Oh,
that thing that we always see with laser beams and high energy source. That possibly could have been sitting in the Great Pyramid, powering it. Now, I say that because, you know, the depiction of Moses in the Ark, all throughout Egypt, there are a golden box with a pole on each side being referenced and shown well before Moses' Exodus. So there is some possibility that the Great Pyramid was a large energy reactor. And I know many scholars, Christopher Dunn and others, have looked at the idea of how Giza and these three pyramids are harnessing energy in some way. Well, the Baghdad Battery, again, is, you know, well known in mainstream science, and very interesting depiction of it is that, you know, it was used to electroplate jewelry. And another thing that they theorized it was used for was, you know, back thousands of years ago, there were ancient churches would always be competing.
All right.
And so sometimes they would use the Baghdad Battery and connect it to a statue and create a large static buildup so that you'd walk in and if you touched the statue, you'd get a zzz, and you'd be like, oh, the power of God.
It's alive, yeah.
Right, so that's kind of interesting, but alternative views is it was a power source. It was literally a battery. And interestingly enough, George, the Baghdad Battery that we well know of, all throughout Egypt, we see larger versions, possibly 6 feet
Same
tall.
concept?
Same concept. If you think about using something this size to power, you know, we've tested on camera and got about 4 volts off of a battery about 4 inches tall.
It does work.
So if you figure one 6 feet tall, maybe we could generate literally hundreds of volts, and you start to apply that towards other technological references. You know, there's a great pharaoh named Akhenaten, but possibly was also known as Moses. There's a whole other story to the exodus of Moses where, Akhenaten was this great pharaoh that left Egypt and took his people, but he also took the Ark of the Covenant, this battery source. Again, all throughout ancient Egypt, there are depictions of the Ark, predating it being used to carry the 10 Commandments, still in Egypt. So I think if Moses was Akhenaten, this great pharaoh, he took the Ark with him, and that's a great reason why the pharaoh would come charging after him. He wanted his battery back. Could have also have been used as some type of large light source as well. Well, the easiest explanation is to say that aliens gave it to ancient man, and I don't think it's that simple, George. I think we have a lost epoch of civilizations, and there seems to be one great civilization that I'm on the coattails of trying to figure out. Right now we call it Atlantis, but what we do find is that there is strong evidence to suggest there have been high technological civilizations that influenced all the great ancients we know of today, the Aztecs, Mayans, Sumerians. They all seem to have pieces of this lost ancient technological civilization that today we hint at as calling Atlantis. That's a much deeper question that's being explored. We go through a repeating cycle here on Earth that causes a rise and fall of civilization. Right now we've heard of the Dark Ages, what we just kind of came out of over the last few thousand years. And we've also heard of the Golden Age. So it appears that history might not just be linear, that we were dumb in the past, we're going to be smart in the future. It's not that simple. It appears that we went through something recently called the Dark Ages.
Something happened.
And we lost a lot of the information that we can trace happen. Meaning, if we look at the Sumerians and the ancient Egyptians, high levels of astronomy, high levels of architecture. We go into the Dark Ages, we forget it all. And as we start to come out, Copernicus and Galileo start to rediscover, well, wait a minute, we're not the center, we orbit the sun. The Sumerians and Egyptians knew that just a few thousand years ago. So it's like they were just starting to lose all the information as we went into the Dark Ages. We're now starting to rediscover it all again, exponentially. And everyone feels the increase in knowledge. The last golden age that we were in was around 10,500 BC. And at that time, it was postulated that we had a great flood. So it could be a yin and yang situation here of when we are in the golden age that doesn't preclude us from having catastrophic events that could cut all that knowledge in half. Or the vast majority of these structures have astronomical references. They were either used as an outpost to monitor the heavens, or they were built, like the Giza pyramids, as ways to mark specific alignments that repeat. We now know that the 3 pyramids in Giza are forming a terrestrial map of the sky of the Orion constellation, the 3 pyramids. But that alignment doesn't take place until 10,000 years ago, actually 13,000 years ago. So somehow the Egyptians, if they were around in 2500 BC, built the pyramids that aligned to the Orion constellation at 10,500 BC. Why? Either the Egyptians have been around a much longer time than we think, or the Egyptians are also aware of this cycle of time, and we're pointing back to saying that's when we are our golden age, that's when we are at the highest point of our civilization, and we're acknowledging it in this astronomical alignment. This is the classic type of architecture of mortarless technology, where they were able to heat these stones to a lava-like state, and then it's very easy and pliable to stack them and fit them together. There's a glassing effect from high heat, which we call vitrification. It's a byproduct of any type of high heat being exposed to a stone, and then it re-hardens. So all throughout these megalithic sites, this type of building style is accompanied by high heat. And we don't know how ancient man was able to heat the stones to a lava-like state. They didn't have any technology that we're aware of to do that. I don't know the actual dimensions of Sacsayhuaman, but we're probably looking at about a 50-foot wall. If you can look in the far left corner, you might see some people.
So they're really dinky next to that wall.
Yeah, they really are. These are megalithic sites, so most of these stones are trilithoton stones, stones that weigh hundreds of tons. It's really interesting too, a lot of these sites, like all over Peru and South America, they were sites that were built next to a standing lake, like Lake Titicaca or Giza being right next to the Nile. We can now look at these sites and see that Lake Titicaca lays several miles from these sites, just like Giza is several miles away from the Nile. So those are, again, geological references to date these without carbon dating. We can see geological pieces that we can track the time that it must have taken for the waters to recede and give us an idea of their true age. And it's much older than we currently think it is.
Absolutely.
Well, we know it was, again, to monitor this knowledge of the movements of the heavens. It marked eternal vernal equinoxes and knew when certain alignments were taking place. But really, not only is it the knowledge of making these alignments happen, it's the architecture. How were they able to move and stack? One of the theories that we hear come out of possible like ancient aliens and theories like this is some type of lost levitation or sound. And then things now, today, in modern science, where they can literally use sound and hover a layer of water in midair on top of sound. So maybe it's a small taste of what they were doing with sites like Stonehenge moving. The more we explore these alternative views with Tesla technology and sound vibration, even things that we're doing at the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, you know, subatomic collision of particles, we're literally discovering new particles and things that show us there is another level of science that we're going to start to utilize once we can just wrap our hands around it. We traveled to Dwarka, as you well know, and there are, again, sites that are being discovered that are underwater.
Yeah.
Right off the coast of
Deeply underwater.
Yeah, right off the coast of many of our continents. So I don't think it's just one city that sank. There seems to be many of them. Dwarka, Yanaguni, Atlantis, even sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey or Rapa Nui, Easter Island, way out there. Again, I think we just need to go through these sites with a fine-tooth comb, and we're going to start to find more connections